It's obviously a fun time of the year. It's neat seeing what our hoops team is doing, and credit to them. And yeah, we get ready for spring ball. And one thing we've kind of made an adjustment with is we're going to have our first practice actually after break, and going to use this week to kind of transition. I was just kind of going through it. We just finished up our winter conditioning, and guys worked hard in it, as they should, but you appreciate them doing the work. But I think we kind of need this week and next week to transition to try to make the most of the spring practice opportunities we get. So just a little bit of a change up that way, but still looking forward to getting those 15 practices. And I think, each, kind of talk with the group a lot. We got 4 phases that prepare you for the season, and each phase is really important, but I think each phase you got to kind of ratchet up a bit. And so thought they had a productive, a good winter conditioning, and phase 2 spring ball. So want to make the most of that and give them 2 weeks here to get kind of prepared for it, and then really March and April spring ball, and then they'll come back summer conditioning, fall camp, and get ready for the season. But excited with Elvis Whitted, the new receivers coach, and obviously very impressed getting to know him. I'm excited for our players to have him as their coach. So that's been a new addition, which again, energized by, and then spring ball itself. It's how can each individual get better, and that's our job as coaches, to help them get better. And it's not as much about what we're doing. Obviously you're putting in your base offense, your base defense. Special teams, you don't do a lot of team stuff that way. We'll do some, but it's the individual skills. And I think spring ball is about developing each player, and then kind of earning a chance for what your role will be in the fall. But spring ball is always a good time. I enjoy it, and I think the players will be looking forward to it. And so excited to get it going, but it won't be tomorrow. We'll get some field work with them and whatnot, but we'll start that when they come back from break.
What came from the Packers, obviously, cutting-edge NFL offense? What kind of guy like that bring ideas-wise? Is that something you look for out of a new guy? Or
I think it's certainly he can give us his background, not just with the Packers, but as a player. But I was also really impressed with what he did, with the different players at Colorado State. We were able to reach out to a couple of the guys that know this place, played here, and that are on teams, and just getting their perspective. Travis Frederick, they've got a guy that from Colorado State that Elvis coached, and it was fun getting that reply. So I think it's a combination, certainly his background and helping us kind of schematically, but the biggest thing is the development of players, and that's where I'm excited.
You got some holes to fill at wide receiver. Who do you look to step into that role beyond Danny and Kendrick and maybe Holmes and Dunn, guys that have been around?
I mean, you got 4 seniors that have played, and then you've got a younger group. AJ Abbott and Taj. Stephon Bracey, I'm anxious to see. We've got one new early enrollee in Chim. So that that group, it'll be a really good spring for them. Emmett Perry has been injured most every part of it. Can he stay healthy? It'll come from that room, but don't know who it is, right? And yet, those 4 seniors, I think they've got a chance. Dunner's not going to do anything this spring, but they've got spring's a great opportunity for them. For instance, KP hasn't done a ton in the slot, but this spring he needs to get some of those reps and see, is that something he could take over a lot of what AJ was doing last year. So it's doesn't matter if you've played a lot or haven't played at all. Spring you can get a ton out of.
At running back, would you want to have like one main guy, or do you think the carries will be divided a little bit more liberally, or how do you want that?
Well, I think with the question, you're getting a little bit into how we're going to play the season, right? And spring, you don't have to worry about that right now. So You got Grosh that's back, and Nakia. I thought Nakia grew a lot last year. I'm anxious to see Isaac Durendo, Julius Davis, get him going. So not going to worry right now how we're going to try to play the fall. It's all those guys will get great work in the spring.
What is your approach to reps at quarterback? Jack did really well as a junior. Do you feel like he's the starter and that's it, or how do you divvy up with him and Graham? What's your approach there?
Yeah, I think it's what I was kind of piggybacking off what I was saying earlier. Each guy. Spring's a great time to improve your craft, right? And Jack did do a lot of really good stuff last year, and yet I think one of his strengths as a player, as a competitor, is always working to get better, and he needs to, right? We all do. And spring there'll be a lot of reps, and so whether it's Jack, whether it's Graham, you got Chase and Danny, those guys all get work. And not worried, kind of like we were talking about with the backs, not worrying how we're going to play the fall, not even worrying, excited to see, that we can make the most out of this spring for them.
You're not worried about the season yet, but you start on a Friday night against a Big Ten opponent. You go
Right.
to Lambeau Field to play Notre Dame. I mean, it's a pretty fun schedule.
Yeah, fun. It is. I mean, you're right. We're working towards the season, and I, every season it's challenging, and I think that is the fun part about it, and I think it is unique when in this group, some haven't had it, some have, but when you open up with a Big Ten game, that hasn't been done well. We've had some big teams that you open up with, but that you better be ready from the get-go. And like you said, going to Lambeau, there's a lot, and the teams we got on the road. That's what's awesome about playing in the Big Ten. Each week's big, and it's going to start right from the get-go.
You've liked that quarterback room since it got together? Do you
I have.
like it even more now?
Yeah, and it was that group they've done a ton, and we're actually just kind of reviewing the winter conditioning, and a couple of strength coaches commented that the energy that group gives competing against each other, for the team, like, it affects the whole room, and I think they've done a really good job of being competitive and kind of balancing that with being good teammates for each other. I think the individuals in that room, they're pretty impressive, and how they approach things has been impressive, and that's where I think why we're so excited for this spring for them to get the work. And they're going to compete against each other. They're going to compete against themselves. It's a competitive group, but they won't do it at the expense. I don't think there's one of them that even in the back of their mind is happy when the other one's, sails the ball or something. They'd rather beat you at it than have a guy screw up or something. And I think our players know that. They know that those four guys will do anything for this team, and that's a great starting point.
Paul, you bring back a ton on defense, except for obviously Zach and Chris.
Yeah.
They were leaders of your defense.
Right.
Who do you anticipate being able to step up and potentially fill those roles?
That's we've got guys who have played a lot. You've got some D linemen and Garrett Rand and Isaiah have played. Jack Sanborn had a ton of snaps last year, right? And yet I think that's what is important about winter conditioning. It starts a little bit, spring ball you get more, but the leadership, the new leadership, the ones that kind of we'll have some that lead in a different way probably. Garrett Groshek and Jack, they were kind of voted upon as captains, for lack of a better term, last year, but they're going to have to lead a little bit differently this year. And guys will emerge, and we've got a number of guys that can be that. Eric Burrell's a senior safety. He's played a lot of football, and I won't be going through spring ball, so that's a little bit. I think you have to be in it with him. He can impact and lead, but it's different till you get going, playing with him. But I'm anxious to see kind of who kind of emerges as genuine leaders of this team.
How do you feel about what you have coming back on defense with so many guys returning?
Yeah, I like the group. Love the two guys that will be moving on. We talked about there was Zach and Chryst, but I like the group.
You look at your offensive line, we got some turnover there for the second straight season
Right.
going to spring ball. Is there anybody that stepped up to you in the wintertime you think that's earned some opportunities?
I don't know that you'd say what they. I think a number of them had a really good winter. I think they were going to get the opportunities anyways, and Joe's done a good job. They're all going to work, and they're going to, that's one that if you were trying to keep score at home, that the line's going to shuffle during the spring. They'll all get opportunities, but I don't know if anyone's that you weren't thinking about emerged, from nowhere on it. But it is a group that's, a lot of them have good experience, and you try to find the best five, right?
On special teams, you'll have a new kick return, a new kickoff special.
Yeah.
Punter. Can you share some names, at least who you're looking at for kick returns, and also the punter and kickoff? What do you look at as you evaluate that going into?
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about that, was one area that we're saying that you give as much change as any, and so spring is a good time to see who that pool will be. So right now it's going to be a lot of names, right? And then that's what helps it. If we can get outside, so you make some of the, especially for the return game, returners. But I think it's, we don't have to answer it, solve it in the spring, but we got to find out who that pool is going to be.
Got a great run of outside playmaking, outside
Yeah.
linebacker. Zach being the latest one that's going to get drafted here. Who do you see filling that kind of role, or how many guys do you have that might fill it? Or
Right, and that's one of the Noah Burks did a nice job playing him, and he's a senior, but kind of an inexperienced senior, right? Didn't play a ton, and we've been fortunate. We've had a ton of production there, and so I think that's a big part of spring. Is kind of how will that shake out? Isaiah Green May started the season last year as a starter, and then Noah kind of ended up beating him out, and we've got some good young talent in that group, but it's who's going to emerge, and a lot of it is not only can you do something, but can you do it consistently, and I think that's what this spring will tell, is then who is that group going to be, because that has been a productive position for us, and I think in this defense needs to be. But I don't know right now today that I could sit there and say here's the next guy, but we got to get some production out of that group.
Do you foresee Scott Nelson being healthy for the start of the season?
For the season, absolutely. And really, he's on a, he'll have a, most every one of them will have a real healthy summer, but it's just not getting the spring ball.
How come, just with all you lost on offense, the playmakers and receiver and running back, how comfortable are you with what you have on the roster coming back to replace them?
Comfortable. Yeah, I like the group, and it'll play out. Each year plays out differently, but I like the group.
With Ted leaving, you lose that passing game coordinator title. Is that something you want to reassign to someone, or how do you want to play that coaching staff-wise?
I'm not real worried about that title, right? I'm not worried about it.
What will be the first day now for
Sunday, when we come back from break.
any reason for kind of pushing it back there? Or a little
Yeah,
bit?
kind of like what I was talking about earlier, where it's a chance to really give these guys 2 weeks to change gears and start. They did a ton in the weight room and really getting on the field and working a lot of the different movements and preparing themselves to take advantage of spring that way.